Hi everyone, today we're going to be looking at the best Sonos setup for your small home or apartment to make sure you don't annoy those neighbours too much. Let's get into it. I've got a pretty small home, living room, kitchen, bedroom, single small guest bedroom and this office/studio. That's pretty much the entirety of my house. So I don't want to go overboard when it comes to building my Sonos system, spend too much money on their bigger, expensive speakers when I might not necessarily need those. So I'm going to aim to give you some great tips on which speakers to go for in which rooms. There's basically only 3 speakers in the Sonos lineup that I think you need to concern yourself with if you have a small house or apartment. They are the Sonos One, the Sonos Beam and the Sonos Roam. We're going to get into exactly why each of those are good in a small house and which rooms they fit best in. And make sure you stick around till the end for some bonus tips as well. Okay, off to the first room. Okay, first we come to the living room. This is really the hub of the home, so if you're just getting started with your Sonos system, I'd really recommend starting in this room. It's where you're going to spend a lot of your time. It's where you're going to host your guests, so having a good speaker in this room is pretty much essential. And the best thing about this is that it's probably where your TV lives, and Sonos have 3 different offerings for soundbars you can buy. My soundbar of choice is the Sonos Beam, which you can see here underneath my TV. They also have the cheaper Ray and the more expensive Arc. And I'd recommend going for the Beam over the Arc or the Ray. The main reason for that is that the Arc is going to be overkill for a small house. It's going to put out too much volume, too much bass. It's really designed for a proper professional home theatre setup. But with the Beam, particularly the Gen 2 Beam that's out now, it's actually Dolby Atmos compatible. So that means you're going to be able to get a kind of surround sound effect without actually having to buy additional surround speakers and find space for those in your living room. The Beam will do it all. It's not going to be the best surround sound you've ever heard, but it's going to be good enough for a small room. The Beam is currently £449 from Sonos, but when you consider you're getting a soundbar and a multi-room speaker to add to your setup all in one, I think it's definitely great value for that main entertainment center of your home. Right, let's see where we're going next. Next up, I'm in my bedroom,
where the magic happens.
You're probably going to want to get the bedroom sorted straight after the living room, probably the second room you want to add a speaker to. And pretty much for any bedrooms in your house, whether it's 1 bedroom or 2, I'd suggest having a Sonos One in each room. I wouldn't go any bigger or more expensive than the Sonos One. It's going to give you all the punch you need. And Barry White's voice is going to sound deep and delicious. Here it is living on my bedside table. As you can see, fits in really nicely into a small space and delivers great sound as well. We're now in the one single guest room in the house, and again I matched this up with another Sonos One. This is obviously for our guests to enjoy music as they please. As the Sonos One has your choice of voice assistant built in, one thing that's really nice to do is to give your guests a little card with some suggested phrases so that they can ask for music. I haven't actually done that for my guests, but that must mean I'm not that nice. We've just got a couple of units in this room where again another Sonos One lives on top next to Iron Man, nicely tucked away in the corner, nice and small, but again delivering plenty of sound for the space and the money. The Sonos One is currently coming in at £199 on the Sonos website, or if you buy a 2-room set, you can get it for £378, so you get a little bit of money off. On to the next room. Okay, welcome to my kitchen. I just had to wait for the washing machine to finish before I could film this. One of the annoyances of living in a small house. But of course, there is a speaker in this room as well. It's a pretty important room where you're going to spend quite a lot of time, especially if you like to cook. And so you're going to need some good sound in here. But again, you really don't need to go overkill if your house is small. I've actually got a pretty decent sized kitchen here considering the overall size of the house. And still, a Sonos One in this room is absolutely plenty for what I need. I've never once found that I need to turn it up to full volume, even when we've had a load of people over and there's a lot of talking and laughing and joking. You probably never need to go above about 65-70% volume, and that's plenty. And they actually put out a pretty decent amount of bass considering the size. If you haven't got a huge house with a massive open plan living area downstairs, you really don't need to go above the Sonos One. Now if you look behind the toaster and the little bread crumb that's on top of there that will flick back in, oops, that was a mistake because that's now going to get burnt and stink out the kitchen. But what you will see behind here is a Sonos One living in that corner, also tucked in behind the pepper mill and our smart meter for gas and electricity. So not the most optimally placed, I will admit, but it's very, very tricky finding space for things in a small house, especially when every Christmas you seem to accumulate more and more kitchen gadgets and you slowly but surely fill up all of your counter space. The great thing about all Sonos speakers now though is that they all have TruePlay. For the Sonos One and the Sonos Beam, this is done via the app on your phone and walking around the room while the speaker plays a sound for your phone to listen to. So in the case of my Sonos One here, when I use the app to TruePlay it, it's going to detect that it's in an enclosed space there with a lot of echo and reduce the bass accordingly. I'm now back in the office/studio where of course I have Sonos speakers as well. The speakers I've gone for in here are a stereo pair of Sonos Roams. Now the Roam is Sonos's smallest speaker and it's also completely wireless, meaning you can grab it and take it anywhere. I've got a couple of wireless Sonos Roam chargers in the office here where I keep the speakers powered up, but then I can take them around the house as I need. They're really great if you've got people coming over where you might not be using the office, so you don't need the speakers in here, but you can take them and place them in those kind of filler areas in the house where you wouldn't normally need to have a permanent speaker. For example, in the bathroom, on the landing, or in the hallway. I'd really recommend having at least one Sonos Roam in your small home set up somewhere, because you can then grab it and take it on the go with you when you travel as well. So you're covered for both home and away usage. I have a pair of them really specifically for use in the garden, because one single Sonos Roam is okay in the garden when you've got 2 or 3 people out there. But if you've got a bigger group, having that stereo sound and a bit of extra punch from the extra speaker is really going to be important. You could buy something like the Sonos Move, which is Sonos's bigger, bulkier wireless speaker. That's really intended for home and garden use and not so much travel, and it's a little bit less versatile for that reason. It's also a little bit harder to find space for in the house because it's bigger even than the Sonos One. It's quite a large speaker. And also if your garden is small like your house is, the Sonos Move is probably going to be a bit overkill. So I find a stereo pair of Sonos Roams to be the sweet spot. The Roam is currently coming in at £179, so it is the cheapest speaker Sonos do. And for the versatility you get as well, you're replacing the need to buy a separate Bluetooth speaker for when you travel. It can live as part of your home setup and your travel setup all in one, and just switch between the two. It's got Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, so that when you're at home it connects to your whole Sonos setup, and when you're away from home you can just connect directly to the speaker via Bluetooth. Sonos have also more recently put out a load of different color options for the Roam, so you have a bit more flexibility with that particular speaker in terms of matching it to the decor in the other rooms in your house. So to recap, in my house I have 3 Sonos Ones, one in the kitchen, one in my wife and I's bedroom, and one in the guest room. I have one Sonos Beam, which is in the living room as my main soundbar and living room speaker, and then the 2 Sonos Roams, which I have in stereo pair in the office, but then can separate them, use them as individual filler speakers around the house, and also a stereo pair in the garden when we're having a garden party in the summer. That is literally everything I need to cover the whole house and garden and travel use with the Sonos Roam without breaking the bank too much and without causing earthquakes. So I think when you're looking at building your own Sonos setup, less is more. Start small and work your way up. Any of Sonos's speakers can be stereo paired, so you can always, if you decide you do want a bit more in the kitchen for example, because maybe you did find out that you do hate your neighbours after all, you can add an additional Sonos One at some point in that room and stereo pair them for a bit of extra sound. I did promise you a couple of bonus tips, and here they are. Bonus tip number 1 is that pretty much all Sonos speakers come in a choice of 2 colours, black and some variation of white or off-white. My recommendation here is, depending on the room that you're placing the speaker in, pick the colour that best goes with either the decor or the other tech you've got around it. For example, in that living room my TV's black, so the Sonos Beam that's underneath it is also black. In the guest room where I've got white walls, I chose the white speaker to blend in with the background. Those kinds of little details are really important in a small house, so you're not making the house look too cluttered. You don't want the tech to be garish in the room that it's in. You want it to fit in nicely, and Sonos's design language allows their speakers to kind of blend into the room. You don't want them sticking out like a sore thumb. And my very last bonus tip is that IKEA actually do a range of Sonos compatible speakers. They're a little bit cheaper than the Sonos speakers. The sound isn't quite as good, but they've done some really clever things in terms of incorporating a speaker into, for example, a lamp, a bookshelf style speaker, and there's a picture frame speaker as well. So they've really thought hard about how to blend a speaker into your decor, which again in a small home can be a really good option. If you haven't got separate space, for example, for a speaker and a lamp on your bedside table, just get the IKEA lamp with a Sonos speaker built in and it talks to the rest of your system. The one thing you'll miss from the IKEA speakers is that they don't have microphones, so you can't use them with your choice of voice assistant. So if you do like that kind of thing, that's just something to be aware of. So there you go. I hope that's given you an idea of how you can get started with Sonos in your small home or apartment and start building up that system so that it covers your whole life without costing the earth. There's product links to each of the speakers I've featured in the description down below. If you like the video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more similar content. Let me know what you want to see next. Thanks, and see you on the next one.